Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. My name is Fazal, allahwala, and this is another episode of Ajeebo ki Baatein. For the viewers who don't know the meaning of Ajeebo ki Baatein, Ajeeb means unique, and Baatein means talk. So unique talk where we have unique guests, and I'm really thankful to Mr. Daniel who came around, and I got a chance. I had stopped doing podcasts, I think, for the past 2 years. So this is going to be a big booster, and hopefully I am making a promise to myself to hopefully do one podcast at least every week. So first of all, happy Eid Mubarak to all the Muslims around. Hopefully you all be having luxurious feast meals around. I'm really thankful to Mr. Dan that you came around. I'm really sorry that I am not able to pronounce your surname correct. So what's the correct way?
No, nobody can. It's Ulin, Ulin. I've known Rayhan a long time and he still mispronounces it, but that's fine. It's just Dan. Dan Ulin is my name. You can just call me Dan.
Okay.
Hi, everybody, and a joyous and joyful holiday to all of my Muslim friends out there today.
So we had the honor to have him around, which made this Eid really special. So really thank you for being with us. I think it's the second time that you have been here in Karachi. Last time I met you. So really thank you.
Of course, my pleasure.
So Mr. Dan is a really I say an interesting personality which have many chapters, many flavors. But the thing that struck me, I was just having a conversation with him and would love to talk about it, and hopefully you guys are going to learn a lot as well. So yeah, you told that at the age of 12, you first travel out of United States.
Right.
When was the first time you traveled solo?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the first time I traveled solo was when I was 19. So just as a frame of reference, my wife and I, my beautiful wife Kelly and I live in Los Angeles, California now, but I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts. So when I was 19, I was already in college in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, at the University of Pennsylvania. And during the summer between my sophomore and my junior year, I think it was that year, maybe it was between my junior and senior year. Anyway, I was 19, I think. I ended up traveling solo, actually with a friend, but we split off and then came back. So it was my first solo trip. And we went to Europe.
So how did the whole story came to being? Because I didn't know that since the grade 9, me and my friends sit around, make plans that we are going not to go out of Pakistan, but maybe out of city, maybe something. But unfortunately, we are not able to execute. So what was the reason that made you?
Well, no, I mean, it's a great thing. I think a lot of people don't necessarily appreciate the country that they live in, and they want to travel abroad. And listen, I'm very fortunate as an American to have lived in 6 countries and worked in, I think now a total of 42. But I'm a lot older. I'm a lot older than you are. Not wiser, just older. And I actually toured the United States on a bus tour with other teenagers when I was 14, I think 14 or 15. It was a summer tour. So you got to see all around the United States, which is a big country.
So was it a trip planned by the school or?
No, this was a trip. It wasn't planned by the school. It was planned. It was a private company that did a bus tour over the summer. I think it was the summer of a long time ago, in the 70s. And we traveled all around. We started in Boston, then we drove all the way through the South, and we went to Las Vegas and California and the Grand Canyon and all of that. It was fantastic. It was all by bus, and it was great. And but you know, it inspired me to want to travel, and I had always been curious about other states and other places, and And but I mean, to your question, it's like you're 20 years old, so it's the perfect time to start doing it. Really, any time is the perfect time. But 20, you're an adult, you're a young adult, and it's sort of safer, and you've got maybe a credit card or a debit card and car keys. So at least you've got some degree of responsibility and maybe a little bit of money in the bank, so you can do it. And you said, now, have you been to Iran yet, or you have not been?
No, I haven't. So I applied for a visa.
Okay.
Then I didn't win. I got the visa.
You got
I
the
didn't
visa, but
win.
you didn't end up going. Okay.
Unfortunately, I am not. I think not that motivated, not that committed that I should go.
Right. If you were committed, you would have gone. Right.
So there aren't strings, but I have made strings for me.
That's good. That's good. Well, I mean, by strings, you mean made a commitment to yourself and said, I'm going to do this, right?
No,
and you make a promise to yourself? Is that what you're talking about?
So by strings, I mean that I made a commitment.
Right.
Then I make excuses. So excuses are those strings.
Okay. That happens all the time, right? we make, and how many times has this happened to you? Gentlemen and ladies and gentlemen out there watching this, where you've decided to do something, but then you haven't followed through on it. And we all do that. I've decided I want to go to the cinema, but then you decide you don't want to. I've decided I'm going to study a foreign language. I'm going to study German or French or Chinese. You decide you're going to do it, but you don't do it. The difference between making the decision and taking action, in that space between making the decision and taking action, that's where it's really important to do it. So, but listen, you got the visa to Iran. You got the visa, so you took that step in what it will take to get there the next time. You got the visa, and then the next time you go.
So at the 19, where did you went solo?
So in Europe, so I went with my friend Rick, still a very dear friend up until even now, and he is an American, and he and his wife live in Thailand. But we started in the UK. So we started in Amsterdam. In the Netherlands. So we started in Amsterdam, and then we went to Paris, and then where I lived years later. And then we ended up going. Oh, we went to Italy. We ended up going to Italy, and then when we were in Rome, my friend decided he wanted to go to Germany and Austria and Switzerland, and I decided I wanted to go to Greece. So I went on my own. It was my first time traveling internationally on my own, and I wasn't scared. It was just interesting. Rick and I were having a great time, and then we agreed we were going to get together 2 weeks later in London. We met in London, and Europe's a good-sized landmass, but for most of the countries in Europe, for many of the countries in Europe, it's easy to travel by train. Go from one place to another, and so that's what we ended up doing, and it was a fantastic trip.
So it was your first Euro trip.
It was my first Europe trip, yes. Not my last, but my first.
In the conversation, you just told us that you lived in 6 countries.
Yes.
Every next Pakistani I meet believes that the United States is the second name of heaven.
Oh, I've never heard it put that way, but
yeah.
Okay.
So everybody dreams about it. Okay. Everybody, and if they don't get the chance the right way, they take the other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah. So, what made you to leave and live in those 6 countries?
Sure. No, it's a great question. So, I love my country, but I think that I didn't leave and move to other countries because I didn't love my own country. I left because I was curious. I say this all the time. ABC for me is not the beginning of the alphabet. It's always be curious. And I was always curious about other countries and other cultures. And I remember when I was growing up, and the first house that we lived in, my dad passed away a few years ago, but my mom is still alive. And the second house we moved to when I was 8 years old, when I was just a child. But before that, we lived in another house in the same town, and there were people from England who lived across the street. And they were telling me, well, this is what it's like in England. And so when I was 4 and 5 and 6, I heard about these stories about, this is London. And I was fascinated with it. So I had that image in my mind. So the first place that I lived, so I've lived in, what are the countries I've lived in? I've lived in Japan. I've lived in Switzerland, France, Germany, the United States, of course, and Thailand. I've done Thailand. My time in Thailand was a little bit shorter, but I've worked in, I'm not going to name all 42 countries, but a lot of them, a lot of countries in Asia, a lot of countries in Europe.
So was the reason, was the curiosity the main reason, or the business?
No, it started with the curiosity. It started with the curiosity, and I think that's what happens with most people. Some people end up going to a foreign country on business. They're working for a company, and their company assigns them to go, or they're in school and they end up doing a semester abroad in another country. For me, it was the first country I lived in outside the United States was Japan, and it was a year after I graduated from college, and I was actually going to move to New York City, to Manhattan, and I had a job in Manhattan in public relations and advertising, public relations really, with an amazing company. And my resume, my CV, made it to Panasonic, which in Japan was called National at that time. I think it's still called that. It was a subsidiary of Matsushita Electric.
We do have products here.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah. So another branded as National or Panasonic? They're probably branded as National here. Yeah, because most of them are branded as National in parts of it. Anyway, so National and Panasonic are the same company, but they're a subsidiary of Matsushita Electric. And I was awarded a research fellowship. It was supposed to be 3 months, I think, to go to Osaka, Japan, and this is in the fall of in the 80s, in the early 80s, fall of 1983, to go to Osaka and work for 3 months. I think it was going to extend to 6 months if I wanted to, developing teaching material, English language teaching materials for Japanese high schools. And the reason I ended up getting that job is that I had done a lot of work in writing and teaching and working with kids. I started working with kids when I was a kid. My first job was working when I was 12 years old, teaching kids who were 8 and 9, your cousin's age, your littlest cousin's age, teaching performing arts in Boston, where I grew up.
So it's more like a tuition.
Yeah, it was. So I had this job to go to Osaka for 3 months, and I told the people in New York who had offered me this great job, I don't know what to do. And they said, go to Japan, spend 3 months there, or 6 months there if you want, if you extend it, and you'll learn some Japanese. And then when you come back, you'll be even more valuable to us, and it'll be a great thing. And I went, and it was similar to the feeling that I have in certain countries I've lived in, much like I've had in Pakistan, where I just immediately kind of fell in love with the place. I fell in love with Japan. And what I fell in love with was that every day it was just something new. There was just every minute there was something new coming at me in my face, much like there is in Pakistan. Try this new food. Try this new. Look over here. Look over there. And same thing was happening in Japan. Every time I looked around, it was something new coming in my way, and I always saw that as an opportunity to learn. And I didn't speak any Japanese when I moved. Nothing. I could say my hello and what time is it. I couldn't even say my own name in Japanese. By the way, Dan in Japanese is still Dan. Dan is Dan. So, but I fell in love with it. And what happened was by accident, I picked up a job at night playing piano in a club across the street from Panasonic, from where I was working, and singing. And it just happened by accident, it's completely by accident. And I loved that. And one of the owners of the club was the rising star at Epson, the big printer company. Well, they do a lot of things, but printers mostly in those days. And I ended up doing some work for him. And the bottom line is that I ended up staying in Japan, not 3 months, but 4 years. Oh, it was a long time. It's a really long time. And the reason I bring this up is that if you're thinking about taking a trip abroad, or whether it's my country or another country, or it's Iran, or even if let's say you're in Karachi and you're looking at going to the mountains, the beautiful, beautiful mountains that you have here in Pakistan, or another part of your own just absolutely gorgeous country, you might plan on coming back a little later than you thought, because you might find something there that is super exciting to you and makes you ask, well, what if I